of articles today regarding homelessness in New York City. One of them basically says that the number of homeless people that use the subway for for living, either it's in the cars or platforms somewhere in the subway system, has tripled from 2008 to 2019. The other article, the other article relates to the program that Mayor De Blasio is using to transport homeless from New York City, the homeless from New York City to like 373, I believe, other cities.
I can believe that too.
So no, but that's an old news. What this particular article says, well, it's a he has a program where he transports the homeless.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
To the states.
to all other states or other cities. But this article, what's new about this is that the city of Newark in New Jersey, that's across the river from us, in New Jersey, they're talking to De Blasio, and I understand they either went to court to object it or to some federal agency to object what New York City is doing. And in addition, the reason for that is because they're claiming that they leave these people in a condition that's unsafe, like it's, they don't have enough heat, they live in a condition that's unhealthy, and so on. So, what they did is also the New York issued a law that prohibits landlords from taking this subsidy money that New York City provides, because what they do is they give him 1 year rent to move him to another city. So they prohibit landlords from taking that subsidy money for more than a month.
Who's they?
The city of Newark issued a municipal law.
So protecting the landlords.
So they don't want people to be moved, these homeless people to be moved to their city.
My cynical question would be, what's it to Newark that New York is sending, or sending their homeless population to different places? That's the cynical question. But other than that, New York has been doing that for quite some time. I'm not sure if it's helpful to those people who they're shipping out. I do know some people personally who were shipped out to like the Albany area, like upstate New York, and as far as they were concerned, they were happy with the circumstances because they got houses, like literally huge houses. But then again, a lot of these areas upstate are economically depressed too, and that's why they're able to get these huge homes. And this was like
they were renting in these huge homes, or the amount of space that they would get for rent in New York City is larger than the amount of space that they would get for the same rent in upstate New York.
Yes,
Right?
huge,
It's a
huge
big
homes.
saving because I believe
I
they've
don't
given
know
like
about saving,
well, for New York City it's a saving. Because
they're offloading.
Because it takes a lot more money to take care of these people annually than it would pay, than just send them off somewhere, give them 1 year rent, where rent is relatively. Very inexpensive to New York City.
What do you mean?
How so? Because I don't understand how you can measure how much it would cost to take care of them.
It costs.
If they're living on the streets and you're not able.
No,
to
because
measure.
the cost is what we do
You
is
mean
we
if you're
send
putting them up in
put them up in a
Gotcha.
hotel, or a home.
Gotcha. Right. Okay.
that costs
cost
like,
of living in New York City is
yeah,
higher.
it costs like, in New York City, it costs like $40,000 a year for a family
Got you.
versus
Okay.
$14,000 in rent somewhere in
Right.
a small town.
But you know, the real question is what happens after 1 year? Like, you know what I mean? Like after 1 year, when these subsidies run out, are they preparing?
That's $1 million question.
population-
Yes.
Right. Are they preparing this population for life after subsidies? You know, like are there educational programs? Are there job training programs? You know, to assist. I don't think it's enough to just send them away, like out of sight, out of mind. You know.
Well, those programs happen even before all that. I mean, there are programs that are, you know, for people that are down and out for different reasons or receiving any sort of assistance, different levels, of course.
Right.
Different types of assistance at different levels of the need.
Right, so these people had been recipients of these services in New York City.
More than
to
likely.
more
Well,
likely,
there
yes.
are stipulations in order to qualify for that program.
those
So they
programs.
would have had to more than likely met. I don't recall. I read something to that effect too, and I remember you had to meet certain requirements. I don't remember what those specific requirements are exactly, but I know they weren't very like you say. Hey, I'm out of a home. You know, send me somewhere and pay my rent. No, you had to verify. There were other programs that you had to have shown that you.
Right, or strings attached to make sure that
well,
you
not strings. I mean, you know,
strings in the favor of this person, that you know,
Qualifications?
to improve this person, to
I
help
hear
this
what you-
person.
But I'm just objecting to the word strings. You know, not all of this. You know, I'm just, and I know what you mean.
Okay.
I know what you mean.
Positive,
I know what you
positive strings attached. How about that?
mean. Okay, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't. The $1 million question still remains though. Like, okay, so they, in order to qualify for this program, they had to show that they either signed up or were on board with these other programs, and just in order to be there.
You get filtered out.
Right, but-
There's certain things people qualify for, and they can be addressed in these other programs. So along the way, you know, it's.
So then what happens? Like again, like after 1 year. Like that's to me the $1 million question. What happens after 1 year? Here's an addendum to that question. What happens after 1 year? And is it the new municipality that now has to foot these costs?
Yes, it is the new municipality
And
because
they may not want to, and that might be Newark's issue.
because the article talks about some homeless who went through this program, were relocated to Newark, New Jersey, and then they came back to New York City asking for help. And New York City said, hey, you're no longer a New York City resident. Now go back to Newark. You don't qualify for help.
Wow. Here's the crazy part, right? Because I'm thinking. Newark, of all places, you're sending people from New York City, in that lower economic
Zone?
paradigm, right? Whatever it is, to Newark.
Well,
Newark
they've
is
sent
like,
people to all over. They've sent people to Hawaii as well.
but
So,
but Newark is like. In terms of like a city, in terms of its economic viability,
discriminating against Newark?
I am. No, I'm not. But, I mean, we could call it what it is. But Newark, to me, seems like they have their own problems. Like they would have enough of their own problems, and New York City is shipping its problems to Newark.
Well,
Of all places, do you think they should have a list of places that make more sense economically?
Well, this is not only a tactic. It's not New York City. This is a tactic used by other states, including California. So it's not limited to just New York. It's a passing off, like you mentioned before, from problems with someone else. It's a hot potato, round robin, whatever you want to call it, however you want to describe it. It's not addressing my hearing about it. It's a dilemma. Because to your question, It's like, what happens after a year? My question is, you can't answer that. Because ultimately, isn't it up to the person to determine what happens after a year? Meaning, what's going on in that year, which their rent is being paid for, or is the situation that got them into what the circumstances
Well-
that got them into the situation that they're in, that they're, they had to be sent somewhere else, that rent is being paid. Has that been
Has that
addressed?
changed?
And ultimately, you could throw money at it from different places. It's not going to matter if the person can't address it themselves. And I don't mean it like they have the ability to. There may be circumstances beyond the person's control. Or is that being addressed? Mental, physical, etc.
Okay, so now you're getting into the reasons why people become homeless. Okay, so yeah, there's statistics out there why people are homeless, and the percentage of homeless with alcohol dependency is like 38%. With other harmful chemicals, 26%. Serious mental illness, 25%. Now, and then you get the percentage of employed homeless people is 25%. Obviously, if you got a drug issue like that, or you got a mental illness, you're not going to get a job.
Well, I remember seeing these stats before in another conversation, right? And my position doesn't really change. That to look at these raw stats, right? To say, well, 25%. Or whatever the percentage is, they have mental illness. I think that these social ills, they also reflect what happens to the society at large. Like there are a lot of people who are not homeless and economically viable that have drug dependencies, that what else is have serious mental illnesses, and yet they're not necessarily stigmatized in the same way a homeless person is stigmatized. Like, to me, and I know I'm going to branch off into a different area here, but I don't look at the homeless as some foreign entity, that like a scourge or something like that. I look at them as just people who have fallen on some hard times, or for whatever reason. Now, some of them may not have. There may be an element, obviously, that placed themselves in that situation due to decisions they've made. That's always going to be the case. But then you're going to have some people who are there because my belief is that society generally cannot support or sustain most of its people in viable so-called occupations, and that goes back to the whole economic theory of full employment, right? And like, what does that actually mean? Like, full employment from the government standpoint or from an economic standpoint means that X number percentage of people will be out of work. I think the number was like 4% of working population. They consider that full employment.
Correct, but if you're faced with the homeless population where 3 out of 4 homeless people are unemployed, all right, so you can see the difference. And yeah, I mean,
They may be homeless because they're unemployed.
absolutely, if you're a landlord, you're going to rent your house to a person who is unemployed. No,
Who's working.
right, you want a working person.
Right.
Well,
So-
how are they going to pay the rent?
Right. So that's a system problem. That's a systemic. That's an economic system problem. The fact that someone is out of work. Everyone who's out of work doesn't necessarily want to be out of work. When we had the last Great Recession, there were people who had been working like 20, 30 years who suddenly found themselves without a job. And some of them became homeless because of that. A number of different reasons for that. Now, there are people who are homeless who you may, if you want, call them like the dregs of society. These people exist, right? But then you also have people who are homeless who got there due to no, what did they say? Like no reason of their own, some statement they made, you know, no account of their own, whatever. I mean, they exist, you know. So I think that we don't want to make them a monolith, right? We want to look at situations individually. If someone is not mentally ill, or someone is not drug dependent, and they're homeless, and they go to like a social service agency, we have to consider that, you know.
It's a complicated issue. I think homelessness is the base of, or the end result of a number of different possibilities of how a person got or gets there, and for a number of different reasons. And for those, each of those reasons, how it's addressed or can be addressed or needs to be addressed different from the other. So it's a complicated. Homelessness is a complicated issue without looking at all the different ways a person can become homeless and why.
Just in and of itself, just the issue itself is complicated.
And bringing it back to how you started is, shipping off. That's what it is, and like
Full circle.
Shipping it off. You're shipping off your unresolvable issues
Well,
to someone else.
The question is, are they doing it because it's a financial resolution, or is it because we're giving up on the homeless?
Well, can it be all of the above? And also, in all fairness to New York City, since you brought up New York City, New York City, it's like California. It's one of the most heaviest populated cities because people from all over come to New York City for either have jobs, and if they had one, they lost one. They lost it for whatever reason. Now they're stuck. So, in all fairness to New York City, it's a magnet for people.
It always has been.
So.